Good afternoon, we're team number 6 and today we're going to talk about the coral reef.
Introduction. During this presentation, we will be talking about the different characteristics and factors that form the coral reefs. First, we know that a coral reef is a shallow water marine community located near the coast, which is dominated by coral communities and rock structures, with a great diversity of species of algae, invertebrates, and fish. These are closely linked with other ecosystems, since they change the direction and speed of ocean currents and help with the establishment of other coastal ecosystems, such as mangroves and sea grasses. During this presentation, we'll talk about the importance of this ecosystem, its characteristics as well, and how and why we should protect it for it to maintain and survive.
First, we're gonna start talking about the geographical distribution. The reefs lie within a strip that forms between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and generally on the eastern side of the continents. In Mexico, reefs can be reorganized into three areas: the Pacific coast, the coast of Veracruz and Campeche, and finally, the eastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. The estimated area that reefs occupy in country is approximately 1,780 square kilometers. Commonly, reefs can exist from a few centimeters above the surface to 50 meters deep.
Some abiotic factors that affect this ecosystem are the fish and sharks, coral, mollusca, algae, cranoids, sea turtles, crabs, and whales. The abiotic factors are all the living organisms of an ecosystem. Then the abiotic factors that are the non-living organisms of an ecosystem. And some examples that affect this are the water, soil, light, climate, and pH.
Now we're going to explain an example of a food web in this ecosystem. The food webs are a very important factor in the safeguard of the coral reef ecosystem. Food webs protect the fragile balance there is between species. There are just a right amount of predators and prey within the aforementioned tropics levels. There are innumerable food webs within the coral reef ecosystem alone, but this one right here is just one example of a food chain in the coral reef ecosystem. First of all, the arrows indicate what is being eaten by what. The organism at the head of the arrow eats the organism at the other end of the arrow. This particular food web starts with phytoplankton, a primary producer that receives its energy from the sun and does not need to consume any organism. The phytoplankton is consumed by zooplankton, a primary consumer. Then, the zooplankton is then consumed by some secondary consumers, the fanworm, the blue cormys, and the sea sponge and coral polyps. The fanworm is eaten by the tertiary consumer, the puffer fish. The coral polyps are eaten by tertiary consumer, the sea slug. The sea sponge is eaten then by the anglefish. Finally, the angelfishes, the blue cormys, and the butterfly fish are all consumed by the tertiary consumer, the reef shark.
Here are some implications about the human activity on the ecosystem. The biological implications are that when hunting, we put at risk or it puts at risk the reefs, the coral reefs, which leads to drying them out or make them sick. The other implication is that water pollution increases the risk of extinction of all the animals or the coral reef itself, and the tourism, it decreases the ability of reefs to perform their proper function, which leads them to dry out. Another implication is the economic implication, which is that the responsible use of natural resources that like tourism or uh, doing some excavations or hurting the sea or contaminating it in order to obtain some economic profits. And we have the social implications, which are the decreasing of natural spaces that preserve the life of the coral reef and the health of it, also as the programs or the conscience of about the society about these problems. And then we have at last the political implications, which are that uh, there are not policies enough or they're not stated as they should be to safeguard the coral reef and all the animals that live in it.
Proposals for the protection of this ecosystem. First of all, it's important to protect this ecosystem because coral reefs prevent erosion and reduce the force of waves. It's the most effective protection against the strong impact of tropical storms and hurricanes, among other reasons. So, what we can do to take care of this ecosystem is when you swim near to the coral reefs, avoid using sunscreen based on oxybenzone or use a black t-shirt with long sleeves to prevent the sunburn. Another thing that it's proposed is to reduce the use of fertilizers. The use of this substance deteriorates the quality of water with its nutrients, which are nitrogen and phosphorus. This water reaches the ocean and damages the coral reefs. Use ecological means of transportation. Instead of using the car, you can go walking or with a bike. The gases of the cars contribute to the ocean acidification and the increase of ocean temperatures, which affects the growth and coloration of the coral reefs. And finally, avoid buying alive corals. And if you buy a fish from a marine aquarium, make sure it was obtained in a sustainable way.
In conclusion, in this presentation, we talk about several different aspects, such as the graphical distribution, the biotic and abiotic factors, an example of a food web, and the effects of human activity, and some proposals to protect the ecosystem, in which we were able to learn about the ecosystem and how we will be able to protect it in the future. Protecting our coral reefs is important since even though they don't look like they're an important factor, they have a big impact in the movement of the waves and they also provide nutrients to different species. We must help from our homes to protect this ecosystem.
Thank you for your attention.